Hi guys, so you've just seen the FL Studio performance with the Launchpad S and Launch Control. I'm going to talk to you about how I created the session and show you a few techniques in FL so that hopefully you can do the same thing. Firstly, I'll explain what I've done in the project. I've imported existing garage tracks, time stretched them to fit the global BPM of 136 here, and I've chopped out one-shot samples, 2, 4 and 8 bar loops of different parts of songs that I want to assign to the Launchpad pads themselves. I've arranged those samples so that they fit into groups of songs. So for example, this section here is a song, this section here is a song, this is another song, a few other samples are scattered around so that I can quickly hit them and access them. And in my second page, if I hit Overview and page 2, there are some more samples. So this is another song here, and these are 2 samples that loop in bars of 8. So the Overview button is really handy here. If you don't see any of these headers at all, you haven't stuck the overlay stickers on. So there are some FL Studio overlay stickers which are really handy so that you can navigate in your session quite easily. So the Overview button is really handy because in the performance you can jump quickly to different pages and hit different samples. Another handy feature of the Overview button is if you press and hold it and hit any of these circular buttons, these relate to controller pages. So for example, there's a template for controlling FPC, the plugin. There are volume controls, there are piano rolls laid out in different scales, and so on. So you might notice at the end of the performance, I hit the Overview button and then I hit this playlist button here, and it immediately put me into a piano roll where I could then play the bass line along with the looping sample. So that's how I did that. So as I said, the Overview button is really handy for navigation and performance. So firstly, we need to get into performance mode in FL Studio. So to do that, we go to the Tools menu, Macros, and Prepare for Performance Mode. The project will be tweaked for best results in a live performance situation. Click on OK, and you're now in performance mode. Another thing we need to do is set up the Launchpad S and the Launch Control within FL Studio. So click on Options, go to MIDI Settings, and in the Input section here, click on Launchpad S, and in this drop-down menu here, select Novation Launchpad S, and make sure that this Enable button is clicked. For the Launch Control, you simply leave this set to generic controller and make sure the Enable button is lit. Then you have to press and hold Factory and hit the 7th pad, and that's the FL Studio template, and you're good to go. So I'm going to quickly touch on how I imported samples, time stretched them and chopped them up. You can click and drag samples onto the performance page here, and the Launchpad will update and show you where you've put them. So if we look on the first page and I scroll to the top, if I move one of these samples, it'll actually update on the Launchpad itself. So if I move this one, you'll see it'll end up there. So as I said, you can click and drag any of these samples onto any pads, and they'll show up there. So what I did is I imported whole tracks, and I had to firstly find out what BPM those tracks were in, and secondly time stretch them to fit the BPM that I've set here of 136. So if we use this sample here as an example, with the transport controls stopped, I can click on this section of the sample here and a menu opens. In this menu, you'll notice there's a detect tempo feature and a fit to tempo feature. So what I had to do was detect the tempo and then fit it to the tempo that I'd set. But you can do that all in the fit to tempo feature. So if you click on fit to tempo, you then get met with this screen here, and you need to guess the tempo range in BPM of the sample that you've imported. So I know it's a garage song, so typically it'll be anywhere between 75 BPM and 150 BPM. So I click on that and it detects exactly what BPM the sample was in, and then we'll fit it to 136. So that's how I did that. And now if we zoom in, I can show you how I chopped up the sample. So let's say I wanted to take 8 bars here and chop that. I simply go to the blade tool, click and drag over that sample, and it chops the sample exactly where I've clicked it. So you have to be really careful where you click it if you want to be accurate. And then go back to the pencil tool. You can now move that anywhere you want it and treat it as a second sample in your session. So effectively that's how I chopped up, time stretched and arranged all of my clips. Now I want to talk about how I assigned the effects to the launch control knobs here. So this is really simple in FL. You'll notice at the beginning of the performance, if I play this, I had a number of filters, reverbs and delays on that sample. And you can assign any effects that you want to any of these samples that you want as well. So to do that, I double clicked on the sample once the playhead had stopped. And then in this effects section here, I assigned that to 1, like that. And then opened up the mixer window by clicking on this icon here. And in insert 1, you can see however many effects I've assigned to that one insert. So I can add as many as I want by clicking on this downward arrow and then adding them here. But I've assigned a reverb, a delay and a filter. And I wanted this knob to move the frequency of the filter. So simply all I did was click on this icon here, link to controller. I moved the part of the plugin I wanted to control with the mouse. Then I simply moved the actual physical knob itself and clicked on accept. And that's now assigned. I did the same thing by clicking on link to controller to this insert level, and then I moved this controller, clicked on accept, and it's assigned. So as you can see, it's really easy to assign effects to individual samples however you want to, and that will enhance your performance. Finally, I want to talk about the different behaviors of the samples within each row. You can change these. So for example, if I hit this sample here, it's a one shot. If I hit this sample, it plays once. But in my second page, if I hit this sample, it'll loop. So to change these behaviors, all you need to do in FL Studio is right click on the row here, go to performance settings, and you can snap the trigger sync to quarter beat, half beat, 1 beat, 2 beats, 4 beats, which will snap the sample when you hit it to the BPM of the song. Or you can change how the sample behaves when you hit it. So here I've got it set to one shot because I don't want it to loop, and I want to hit it once, take my finger off it, and the sample sound. By selecting one shot and re-trigger, I can then hit that sample as many times as I like and it re-triggers a sample. If I set that to hold and stop, you'll see that I have to hold the pad down so that the sample then plays in full. So I'll just show you that quickly. And this applies to all of the samples on that row. So for me to hit the sample, it play once, and be able to re-trigger it, I set it to one shot and re-trigger. On the second page, where I had the looping sample, I'll go down to that now. right click on track 9, go to performance settings, and I simply set that to stay. And what that will do is loop through that section until I tell it to stop by pressing one of these round buttons. So hopefully now you can see how I've created the session and laid out all my samples and used some of the features in FL Studio to enhance the performance. Thanks a lot for watching.